The first state in alphabetical order, Alabama. It has the Talladega Superspeedway, the battleship USS Alabama, and this interchange. That leads you nowhere. What the fuck? It, along with a few other southeastern states, is home to Dixie Alley, an area in the United States that could be even more tornado-prone than Tornado Alley itself. Dixie Alley is probably known for two major outbreaks, the April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak and the 2011 super outbreak. At the time of the recording, it's been nearly 15 years since the April 2011 super outbreak, which occurred on April 25th through the 28th. This is by far one of the deadliest outbreaks in modern history. April 27th alone, killing over 300 people. 2011 was a significant year in meteorology history, ranging from the April 2011 super outbreak all the way to the El Reno tornado. No, this is the El Reno 2011 EF5, not the 2.6 miler. It wasn't just tornadoes that were significant in 2011. There was also the Australian bushfires, which of course is in Australia. Australia is always on fire. And the Japanese earthquake, later triggering a tsunami. Before I rant, let's explain the history prior to the 2011 super outbreak. There are a few notable tornadoes before the 2011 super outbreak. One of them dissipated in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Yeah, it's kind of an ironic note of what happened, because that's the same city that got hit by an EF4 on April 27th. On April 22nd, there was an EF4 tornado that hit the city of St. Louis, Missouri, injuring 5 and thankfully killing no one. However, this was one of the last significant tornadoes before April 25th. On April 25th to the 26th, there were a few EF3s that hit the states of Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Kentucky. There was also a massive EF2 that hit the town of Valonia, Arkansas. A short-tracked but powerful EF3 tornado hit the Fort Campbell airfield in Kentucky. And on April 9th, near the small community of Albert City, Iowa, another short-tracked but even more powerful tornado struck near the city. There were also a couple EF2s and several EF3s that hit through North Carolina through West Virginia. Between April 1st and April 26th, there were roughly reports of 646 injuries and 39 fatalities, a number that would completely be destroyed in a single day alone. That fateful day, on the 27th of April, 2011. During the early hours of the 27th, there was a squall line that spawned 76 tornadoes in the process. As a result, several EF3s touched down in the early hours. After the squall line, it was more difficult for people to receive warnings from the National Weather Service, thanks to the fact that tornadoes caused power outages all across the area. This could have been one of the leading factors of the high death toll of April 27th. However, I'll explain that later in the video. One of the towns that was hit in the early hours was Cordova, Alabama, a town that will be relevant later in the video. Later, the National Weather Service boosted the tornado risk up to 45%. For reference, the day prior only had a 30% risk, which is still a high risk regardless. As the sun rose, the afternoon began, and probably one of the darkest afternoons in people's lives. In parts of Louisiana and Mississippi, at 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time, the first storms of the outbreak were beginning to form. Between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., the first tornadoes were decently mild to decent in strength. However, at 2:30 p.m., the first violent tornado of the day struck. Carving a 28-mile path, the Philadelphia EF5 is the first EF5 of the day. This tornado will be well known for its 2-foot deep trenches at some points of its path, probably some of the worst ground scouring ever recorded. During its lifespan, it unfortunately killed 3 people who all at the time were in the same mobile home. And if you don't notice until now, mobile homes in tornadoes are basically death traps. They provide no structural support, often being thrown by weaker tornadoes in the process. What makes this tornado unique outside of its EF5 rating and 2-foot deep trenches is the supercell alone. You see, the supercell that produced the Philadelphia tornado also produced 3 other tornadoes I'll be explaining later. Anyway, as the Philly tornado struck at Mississippi's neighborhood state, Alabama, the Coleman tornado touched down. The Coleman tornado was a multi-vortex tornado that struck around Coleman, Alabama and traveled along a 46-mile-long path. This tornado will be on the ground for around 58 minutes, killing 6 people. At around 3:05 p.m., just west of Hamilton, Alabama, the Phil Campbell-Hackelberg tornado touched down. This was a mile-wide wedge that tracked 102 miles, one of the longest tracked tornadoes of the day, responsible for steamrolling through Hackelberg, Phil Campbell, Tanner, and neighborhoods northwest of Huntsville. This tornado would cause the deaths of 71 people, not only making this tornado the deadliest tornado of the day or the outbreak, but the deadliest tornado in Alabama state history. Some of the most eye-catching damage would easily be the storm cellar that had its ceiling completely torn off, an area you should take shelter in during a tornado, and also the town of Tanner, Alabama. When Tanner was hit in 2011, it became the only community in the world to be hit by 3 F or EF5 tornadoes. Previously was struck by 2 F5s during the 1974 super outbreak. Tanner's elevation is also the number 666, the number of the beast. After the Philadelphia tornado dissipated, the Cordova-Blunsville tornado steamrolled through the town of Cordova, which was already hit by an EF3 in the morning hours. This tornado crossed 127 miles, the longest tracked tornado of the outbreak, killing 13 people in the process. During the super outbreak, many towns and cities were hit by the tornadoes, but personally, I believe Cordova was the most unluckiest town during the super outbreak. Like, imagine that for a sec. You're living in a town in the southeastern United States, and then suddenly, a tornado with EF3 strength decides to tear down your town. Later, as you are picking up debris, another tornado, this time even larger and even more powerful than the last, decides to head towards your town, resulting in even more damage and more lives. At around 3:40 p.m., just after the new Ren EF3 dissipates, the small town of Smithville will be in grave danger because a tornado became an EF1 to an EF5 in less than 6 seconds. Drilling up to 2 feet deep, the Smithville EF5, clocking at 60 miles per hour, nearly wipes the town off the map. Crossing a 36-mile-long path, the Smithville tornado will kill 23 people. 6 of them were in a single building alone. But in Smithville, the scene was apocalyptic. A red SUV was thrown into the Smithville water tower and landed in a cemetery, leaving a 6-inch dent in the water tower that's still reminiscent today. But back to the point, the tornado turned into an EF5 in less than 6 seconds. Normally, after touchdown, tornadoes will grow from EF0 to EF4 at most within half an hour. But the intensity to EF5 in less than 6 seconds make people believe that Smithville is one of the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded. And personally, I believe Smithville is in the top 5. But one thing for sure is that Smithville is probably one of the most violent tornadoes ever recorded. At around 4:43 p.m., the most well-known tornado of the outbreak will touch down just southeast of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, rapidly building in strength as it inches closer to the city. Storming in at 60 miles per hour, the tornado will carve into the city like a hot knife through butter. Nearly missing the University of Alabama and a hospital, the tornado will leave Tuscaloosa along with 44 casualties. After this, the tornado will make its way through large areas of forest until it makes its way to Birmingham, the largest city in the state, plowing through smaller communities such as Fultondale, Concord, Forestdale, Pleasant Grove, and Tarrant, dissipating after 80 miles. But the damage in the urban areas have been done. The super outbreak was very costly in damage, but the Tuscaloosa tornado was $2.4 billion alone, making it the costliest tornado at the time until Joplin came around not even a month later. This tornado will be responsible for 64 casualties and over 1,500 injuries alone, making the Tuscaloosa-Birmingham tornado one of the worst tornadoes of the outbreak. At roughly 5:45 p.m. near the town of Raleigh, Mississippi, the Rose Hill Enterprise EF4 touched down. Like the Cordova and Hackleberg tornadoes, this is one of the longest track tornadoes of the outbreak, reaching 122 miles. Despite the tornado's slow speed, it lived for nearly 3 hours. Most tornadoes live up to 10 to 30 minutes at most. Yet this tornado touched down roughly 5:45 p.m. and dissipated at 8:35 p.m. Its highest winds was roughly 175 miles per hour, killing 7 people. At roughly 6:20 p.m., the same supercell that produced the Philadelphia and Cordova tornadoes formed the final EF5 of the day, which would be known as the Rainsville tornado. This would be a multi-vortex to wedge tornado that killed 20 people in a 37-mile-long path. Frankly, out of all the 4 EF5s, Rainsville is probably the most forgotten compared to the rest. However, Rainsville did shear off a school bus down to its frame. I just wanted to bring that up. However, the damage doesn't really matter, especially with the lives lost, because lives were lost. Lives like you and me. Lives and personalities that were taken away from storms each year. The number of the death toll is not for like cool science shenanigans. These were human lives lost. Lost to time. Loved ones vanished. This is just something I just want to clarify. Anyway, back on subject. After Rainsville, several more EF4s will terrorize through Tennessee, Georgia, and some parts of Alabama. The same cell that produced the Tuscaloosa tornado also produced the Ohatchee EF4, a tornado that was probably just as strong as its predecessor, covering 97 miles and killing 22 people. The same supercell that produced the Rainsville, Cordova, and Philadelphia produced the Ringgold tornado, probably one of the strongest tornadoes in Georgia state history. Crossing through the Georgia-Tennessee border, this tornado will last 54 miles and killing 24 people. Ringgold was probably one of the last violent tornadoes of the day, and probably one of the last violent tornadoes of the super outbreak. When the 28th of April arrived, there were actually a few strong tornadoes, but none of them were comparable to that of the EF4s and 5s of the day prior. After the 28th, the super outbreak has concluded. The 2011 super outbreak is easily one of the worst outbreaks in modern US history, with an overall death toll of 348 including non-tornadic deaths. It caused $10.2 billion in damages, the costliest outbreak on record. If you're here now, you're probably wondering, how come the tornado outbreak was so deadly? Well, we gotta talk about the homes and locations that the tornadoes hit. Let's take Tuscaloosa as an example. You see, Tuscaloosa hit 2 major cities in Alabama, both of them exceeding 100,000 people in population. Another factor could be the tornadoes themselves. For example, if we take Hackleberg and Tuscaloosa, both of them were rain-wrapped monsters, basically tornadoes covered in sheets of rain. And there were good chances some victims actually fell for the tornado's cloaks. And once they realized that they were the tornadoes, it was far too late. Whatever the case can be, it can never bring back the 348 lives lost from the super outbreak, or any tornado outbreak in general. The 2011 super outbreak can be defined in many words, but even in the darkest day, there will always be hope for people who have been affected by natural disasters. And now many towns across the southeastern United States have been thriving since the April 2011 super outbreak. But the number of memorials in towns like Smithville and the distorted trees can remind you of what happened on that fateful afternoon of April 27th, 2011. Thank you for watching. I did not have a script for this. Well, barely had a script for this. Next time when I try to make a tornado video like this, I'll make sure I actually can say something well. Not to mention I don't have a mic. Microphone. This video was made to tell about the April 2011 super outbreak 15 years ago. And as you hear my voice throughout the following minutes of this video, you can tell I should have started this a long time ago. Well, I guess this is kind of it now. See ya. I guess. I don't know.